Okay, so this is something you've definitely seen before, but I just wanted to create a quick video to remind you of the topic, okay? So what if someone asks you the question, does a quadratic have any x-intercepts? Notice I didn't ask you what they are, I just asked you how many there are, okay? And what I want to do is I want to go back to the idea of the quadratic equation. If you remember, the quadratic equation is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root, okay, of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, okay? And again, I just want to know how many x-intercepts there are. Well, let's think about this question, okay? When we think about x-intercepts, we typically have two, okay? The question, where do we get two answers from? Where do we get two answers from? And if you think about the quadratic equation, take a look at this. Take a look at that plus or minus. Notice in one case I'm adding the square root of b squared minus 4ac. In another case I'm subtracting. So where do we get the two answers from? It comes from the plus or minus piece, right? It's the plus or minus that gives us the two answers. So let's run through a couple scenarios. Let's pretend I have an equation where I'm doing negative b plus or minus, and what happens underneath the radical is I get plus or minus root 0. Well, if I'm adding root 0, or whether I'm subtracting root 0, you still are adding and subtracting 0. So how many different answers are you going to get? You're only going to get one x-intercept, because you're adding or subtracting the same thing. But let's say I had something like plus or minus, I don't know, root 10. In one case I'd be adding root 10, in another case I'd be subtracting root 10. Would you get two different answers if you were subtracting root 10 versus adding root 10? Of course you would. So if you have something like root 10, you might have two x-intercepts. Well, what if I did something like plus or minus root negative 10? Well, if you think back to your radical rules from last year, okay, can you take the square root of a negative number? Well, with real numbers you can't. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. So what are you going to have? You're going to have no x-intercepts. The quadratic equation breaks down if you have a negative under the radical. So really, what does the number of x-intercepts depend upon? It depends upon the value we have underneath the radical. If we have a 0 number, we have 1. If we have a number greater than 0, we have 2. And if we have a number less than 0, we have none. Okay? That thing, the b squared minus 4ac, is what we call, again, this should be review, the discriminant. Okay, it should be called the discriminant. Okay, so b squared minus 4ac is equal to the discriminant. It can tell us a lot about the number of x-intercepts we have. So for example, if b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, what does that mean? It means we have one x-intercept. B squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, we have 2. If b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, like a negative number, like negative 10, we have 0 x-intercepts. That is the discriminant. So if we move down now and take a look at a few examples, okay, let's do one together. So this one, it says, take for instance the equation y equals x squared minus 4. Using the quadratic equation and specifically the discriminant, what, if any, are the x-intercepts? This is an older version. I just want to know the number of x-intercepts here. So let's just remind ourselves that in The basic quadratic equation is y equals ax squared. Okay, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. In this case, what's the b value? It should be y equals x squared plus 0x minus 4. You don't have to add in the 0x, but we're doing it here just to remind ourselves. So if I'm doing b squared minus 4ac, I'm going to have 0 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 4. That gives me 0 minus, now let's just multiply what's there. 4 times 1 times negative 4 is negative 16. So we have we have 0 minus negative 16, which is the same as 0 plus 16, which is 16. If we have a positive discriminant, we have a number greater than 0. How many x-intercepts does that mean? You can do it out. That means we have 2 x-intercepts. We have 2. Let's take a look at this last problem. Try it now on the equation y equals negative x squared plus 2x minus 4. Now I encourage you to pause the video here and try it on your own. So try pausing it. Once you've done it on your own and you think you have the answer, hit play and check your answer against mine. Okay, so let's do the discriminant now here. We have the b value, which is the 2. So we have 2 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times negative 4. Be careful, there's a lot of negatives being thrown out here. 2 squared is 4 minus 4 times negative 1 times negative 4 gives me positive 16. So I'm left with 4 minus positive 16. 4 minus 16 is negative 12. If I have a negative discriminant, what does that mean in terms of the number of x-intercepts? It means I have 0 x-intercepts. All right, so that is a discriminant. It is something you've seen before. Hopefully it just reminded you, gave you a little reminder of what you saw last year. Again, it could show up on the quiz, so it's an important thing to know.